Hello, ladies. Welcome to our Red Program 151 review meeting. We are going to be going through the material of the Red Program, which was issued on the 1st of January 2026, very punctual for Ale, um, on the very, very beginning of the year. Um, it is a little it is not as heavy as the last one, as 150, which had a lot of metrics and a lot of, hold on, let me get my cat out. Yeah, yeah. I have three children, two dogs and a cat. Okay, so let's get through this. Oh, because Alejandra hasn't shared the calendaria like she did last year, and I was doing mine and I didn't finish it, so I don't have it for the lab, but I'll share it with you after the meeting. Um, okay. So what I was saying is that there is an important synchronization between now in the last read program, Alejandra was talking about a synchronization uh, between apparatus 507, like the connection that apparatus 507 had with apparatus 396, right? The apparatus of the anomaly. Um, and then right now she is pointing out the connection between apparatus 507 and apparatus 493, which is the apparatus where Alejandra was born. So apparatus 493 and 396 are very important, and she has talked about these two a lot, right? So she's saying that she thinks that this is a point of an inflection point, a point of change, okay? So that we are able to become at the stature of what the unified field is asking from us. Um, why? Because we have the privilege of having an extra reach in our antenna, so we are able to anticipate many resources for many challenges that we can't imagine that are coming, but that are coming. Okay, so um, that is what she's saying about apparatus 507. It is a point where we need to be up, like we need to be, how do I translate this properly? I said stature, but like up to the requirements of what the unified field needs from us, because we have this privilege of this extra scope. Okay, so the relationship between 507 and 493 is, she calls them twin apparatuses, because the first day of apparatus 507 and the first day of apparatus 493, they begin with the same day of the week. So this is very important because you know how in LGC we establish resources and then later those resources activate, right? So this is like I don't know how long ago Alejandra presented that explanation about the days of the week, which wasn't something that has been present all the time, right? It wasn't present for many years of the development. Then she presented it, and then it she just included it, but it's not very developed. So now it is like it is activating this extra variable that we use in the metrics to read the unified field. So the 1st of January of 493 is the same day of the week of the Asume of 507. So the days of the week are synchronized. We have 7 days of the week when in calendaria we have a base of 4. It is like we have a week in calendaria. Our weeks are 4 days long, right? Because we have 4 in each quadrant. Um, and she says that this is because we are doing a very like handmade, like the word artesanal, that's like uh something that's very artsy, that's someone that makes something with their hands. How do you call that? Like artistic? Not artistic, but like when somebody does something with their hands and it's very dedicated and focused.
Artwork? Artwork? Just very simple artwork?
Artwork. Let me find the right word. Hold on. Because it's not very art.
Handcraft.
Handcrafted. There you go. That's the word. Uh, so that's what she's saying. What we are doing is a task that is handcrafted with the code. Very, very delicate and very detailed. But there comes a point when all of the variables that we have been working with, synchronize in a very structured way that is going to help our comprehension. So, as we have seen, as we move forward with the development, the comprehension becomes more and more clear because Alejandra is improving her description. And of course, because the resource itself is maturing and it's synchronizing. Okay, so the first day of apparatus 493 and the first day of apparatus 507, the first year, sorry, which is 1969 and 2025. They synchronize day by day. Now, what is the variable between those two dates? Right? The variable, which would be the constant, how many days between one and the other date, that would be 20, 4, 5, 4. 454, 45, we know that it is the administration of the filter, very important. Argentina, the code Argentina is executing a specific task inside the ionosphere in relation to that. But then we have the parameter 54, which has to do with the orbitals of the solar system that predetermine what the requirements of the code inside the ionosphere have to execute. Now, what she's doing here is interesting because she is adding something new to the concept of what we have of 54, which is in relation to the table. Okay, so remember that in the table we have, wait, apparatus 49. This is in relation to apparatus 493, 492, 491, 490. Wait, uno, dos, tres, no, wait, one, two, uno, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco, 493, 488, I think this is the apparatus, which is year 1950. Remember that? So it is apparatus 488, the years of apparatus 488, 489, etc., until we reach 493, which is this one. So, like, what we can see here is that we have these spaces in black, and then we have like a this is an extra challenge, extra challenging. When we route these spaces and we reach this one, she is saying that um it is an extra layer of challenge for us to route this. Okay? And when does this happen? When does this breakage happen? Okay, it happens right in the middle of the table, which is 16 spaces from here to here, and then 16 from here to here. Yeah? And also, this breakage happens between levels of the table 4 and 5. You see? So here she is adding a new detail, which is a very, very important and subtle for the rest of humanity detail, but for us, we're going to be able to include that when we are working with the concept of 5445. This breakage right here. And also, this is related to apparatus 493. So there's a lot of things going on in this particular moment in the table. This is like a very important moment in the table. So that's what she's saying here, right? So between 1969 and 2025, we have this constant. The recreation of the administration of the destinies or the filter. 44 is also read as the collective destinies synchronizing. So that is what she added here. And then Ale says, this is also clear when we read it in a structured way. But the most critical point arrives in an assimila year, because in an assimila year, all of the resources that we have already prepared are going to be received in real life. It is as if we're going to be able to, in to some extent, and of course, depending to each person's reaches, use those resources in real life. Because remember in the past, everybody was so anxious and everybody was asking Ale, like, yeah, but what does this mean? What does this mean in real life? Give us a real life example. And it was like, no, I mean, no, because it wasn't the moment. Because it was a foundational moment in the development. We were establishing concepts. We were training ourselves to process a logic that was not human. So it couldn't be associated with anything. The association part is the last thing that we do when we want to organize something. Now we can do that because now we have a history in LGC. Now we have metrics. Now we have established resources that after all these years we can begin to use and begin to learn how they work. But we're beginning. This is going to take a long, long time. So, okay. The day that the program was recorded was day 1 of an Asimila year. Remember when we talked about the cons that between this Asimila year and the Asimila year of the anomaly, 4 years exactly. So that is like the relationship between this apparatus and the apparatus of the anomaly, 4 years respectively, right? In each year. Now, the critical point, that is why all of these things are happening in the world, because we are standing on a very important position in the space-temporal structures that has a direct connection with the apparatus of the anomaly. But of course, this is a challenge at the level of the solar consciousness, and we are participating, of course, in that whole process, because for Sol to qualify as civilized express universe, it needs to be including everything that it's within its local reality, and that it includes us. So we are a part of that, of course, because it is part of the requisition that Sol has to qualify. Um, okay, the negative of the apparatus of day 1 of an Asimila year is 1095. What does that mean? The reset of the barra tal. Barra tal 951. The reset of the barra tal. 50 is the structure that's going to be backing up that code. And it is a structure that includes subatomic all the way to anatomic. That code needs to have a structure that backs it up from the subatomic to the anatomic for it to work properly. It needs to include everything. So because it includes all those scales, we are going to be able to extract resources from the antimatter. When before this was just not there. We didn't have, like, our connection with the antimatter was completely interfered. And there was no possibility for us to update. There was no possibility for us to synchronize with each other, to recognize each other, to work collectively for the improvement of the nothing like that. Because all of those improvements need to be pre-worked in the antimatter and then slowly permeate elegantly in the anatomic scale, which would be what technically should have happened if this manipulation of the solar code didn't happen. That's why we are arriving in this level of technological development, this whole situation with the AI and this geopolitical scenario we are arriving to a specific point in humanity, but our consciousness, so the social consciousness is so delayed, it cannot deal properly with all the challenges. Why? Because the quality of the code was interfered. If that didn't happen, we would have probably arrived to this specific point, challenging specific point, with a better resources. But the good news is that solar consciousness performs at a subatomic level. So it can access any point in time because it's atemporal. So that is the good news. The fixing of the code, we can experience it like we are experiencing that in real time. Um, okay. So the reading of the code enables us to use the resources of the container and to be expectant and aware and in anticipation of the challenges of the container. So if we have an active antenna, of course, we're going to be enabled to use the resources of the container and be aware and anticipated of the challenges of the container. So all of these signals provide parameters for us. So we are not being guided by the memories of what has happened in the past, but we are being guided by an active antenna that is going to be anticipating us to what will happen. But we're not talking about a prediction. We are talking about a mute signal, which is what we call intuition. Intuition is something that we cannot explain because it has no words, but it is a signal that arrives mute that allows us to somehow anticipate something that is coming. I'm sure we can recognize that in some areas of our lives. Ale has used in the past connection between mothers and children. This connection of intuition is very strong, where they are able to anticipate something. Okay, that is just like an example. So if we are able to read with anticipation, of course, this is if our psychic structure is functioning properly, of course. If we are able to read with anticipation, that provides a lot of air in our cone. The thing is that this is not going to help you avoid any challenge that you're going to have in the foundation because the foundation is going to be moving like crazy. And this is what has been happening. The global foundation is being shaken very, very strongly. Um, but the thing that we are going to have is the capitalization of what has happened. We're not going to be guided by the memories of what have happened, but we are going to be capitalizing what has happened. So, if we have worked very hard in our conceptual area and understood that faults, defects, and errors are necessary for us to be able to create improvements, then we're going to find in every fault, we're going to find a treasure and an opportunity. But this is only if the antenna is on. Because if the antenna is not on and it is the memory that is on, if within every fault, we're going to find frustration. We're not going to be able to capitalize it. So that is like a very good way to detect whether or not I am using my antenna or whether I am using my memory. If I am registering, I am not assigning any value to anything. I'm just registering. If I am registering frustration, then what am I going to do? I'm going to be reasoning and I'm going to be like, oh, probably I am guiding myself by memories. So what do? You just neutralize that and shift your focus, shift your observer to your antenna. Okay, so this is like a really good way to locate how the state of a processor. If in every fault, if I am able to not have rejection to a fault, and instead I use that fault to make an improvement, I am using my antenna. If not, if a fault turns on the self-rejection or rejection towards another person, and I get frustrated, then I am being guided by the memory. To reject somebody else is an externalization of self-rejection. Rejecting somebody else is an externalization of self-rejection. Now, this is something that I personally add. There is a difference between rejecting somebody else to setting boundaries. Because I have seen personally how I set boundaries to somebody else and they interpret that as me rejecting them. No, I'm not rejecting them. I am including them in my processor, but I am not including them in my anatomic instance because I just can't have it because that person is a transgressor. So I have to set a boundary. I don't reject the person, I include the person in my at the level of the processor because I still need to process that information. Those I still need to process those signals because it's going to help me. It's something that I'm capitalizing. But that doesn't mean that I have to include that person in my life. So there's a difference between rejection and a boundary or a membrane, right? That is the management of a membrane. I'm not just going to allow everybody in if I just can't have it. Okay. So, the externalization of self-rejection into somebody else, it's basically the same thing, right? Which has to do with failing in the flow of signals. If I am failing in the flow of signals, if I am failing in the processor at the level of the processor, all I'm going to be having is rejection and frustration. Okay? Okay, so this level of this level of registration of the fault is very specific, of course, because we have been formed to even have this potential of doing this. But at a social scale, this is of course impossible. So how do you fix a fault in the flow at the level of the processor, in the flow of signals? There's a fault. How does the social area manage that? Blame. They blame each other. No, it's your fault. No, it's your fault. No, it's your fault. No, it's your fault. Why? Because they need to depressurize their nervous system. Now, I'm going to add something else myself. There is a difference between blaming somebody and setting the boundaries and not carrying something that is not mine. So it is a boundary. You deal with you, I deal with me. We're not blaming anybody. Each person takes responsibility for what they need to take responsibility for. There's no blame, but there's not either an overcompensation from either part. Okay. So blame, this is like for us as the firefighters, right? Because that is kind of like our role here as helpers of the container to contain. So what is this for? How does this help us? To understand that if somebody has self-blame or guilt or blaming somebody else, they need to do it because they need to depressurize their nervous system because that's the only thing that they can do. Unless the person is receptive and we are able to tailor a resource specifically for them that helps them do something different. That is if the person is receptive, and there's many receptive people, and we can use this is like raw petroleum for us. We receive it raw. But when we want to share it with somebody else, we have to refine it and tailor it specifically for the person that is receiving it so that it is actually helpful for the person, because I don't want to just like use the LGC language to make myself look really cool. And then the other person's like, I didn't understand anything. No. The idea is to clarify the perception of somebody else, not to make them more confused. Okay. So that is like for us to understand what blame, what guilt what the function of guilt. We're looking at this very technically. Um, so there's an exhalation when I cannot mm, become responsible of the fault at the level of the processor. What do? I exhale that guilt into the second 11 laps. The other one can do whatever they want because it's the other person's fault and not mine. I take no accountability. But what happens when my antenna is on? Do I need to blame somebody? No. Okay, so this is really interesting because Alejandra uses the word culpar, lupar. Culpar is to blame. Lupar is from magnifying glass, lupa. Remember that? In Spanish is culpa or lupa. Lupa is hyper focusing to look at extra details that allow me to understand things from different perspectives, and that dissipates the guilt. The culpa is dissipated when I turn on the lupa. So I'm going to be using these two words from now on. Culpar, lupar. Lupar is to magnify. Magnify the focus. Culpar is to blame. Okay? So we're going to be lupando, magnifying. If our antenna is on, we're going to be magnifying and not blaming. Now, this is very, very important. When am I able to magnify something, hyper focus on something? When am I able to do that? When I have no conflict with my own flaw, with my own defect. If I still have a problem, friction, frustration with my own conflict, I'm never going to be able to accept somebody else's defect. Never. But if I am at peace with my own defect, I am fine with it because I know I have previously worked with the concept of what a defect is and what it's for. I have worked with it conceptually. Then when I make a mistake, when I exteriorize a flaw, when I expose myself, I don't get embarrassed, I don't get frustrated. What do? I take accountability of that and I capitalize it. I use that mark to create an improvement. But I have to do that for myself first. If I'm not able to do that for myself first, I am never going to be able to do that with somebody else's defects. But imagine if we're able to do that with my own defect and everybody else's defects, I'm going to be improving all the time. That's going to be scalar growth based in 11, based in the interaction one to one. So if we're doing this, not only are we going to be capitalizing ourselves in one, but we're going to be able to improve the interactive quality. This is like crucial because it is one of the main focuses that the Solar Code wants is to improve the interactive quality in its contents. So everything that we magnify has to work for us at the personal scale. And once we do that, it's going to work for us at a collective scale, at the level of the interaction, improving our interaction with each other. And then she makes a really good clarification here. She says, when we are evolving at a personal scale, it has to do with everything that I'm able to keep quiet. And when we are talking about evolution at the level of the subatomic scale, it has to do with everything that that I am able to say. So, if I am evolving at a personal scale, if I want to grow at a personal scale, I'm going to be able to do that the more I'm able to keep quiet. Be quiet. Be quiet, especially for us, because we have all these abstract concepts that are going to make no absolute no sense to anybody else. So we have to be keep quiet. But in this context where we are here, what we are doing is we are evolving in a particular scale. So when we are evolving at a particular scale, we're talking about everything that we are able to say, describe, because we want to describe the flow of signals, right? And that would be description is the ebb and flow between the consciousness and the mind. And it has to do with coding. The mind codes what the consciousness has or receives. So that's what we're going to be doing. If we want to evolve at a subatomic level, it has to do with everything that we're able to describe. If it's at a personal level, it has to do with everything that we're able to keep quiet, which is very hard to keep quiet, right? We want to tell everybody, and especially in the early stages of the development. Oh my God, I could not be quiet. And everybody was like, "What?" I would burst people's neurologies all the time until I understood. I was like, "Oh, I shouldn't do that. I don't think I should be doing that." And I stopped, right? But I mean, it's part of the process. Um Okay, so the third dimension is a structure, and every structure is going to have uh, opposite and complementary, all kinds of variables that are opposite and complementary, right? Um, and it's gonna need that because it's a structure. It's gonna need things that are opposite. But because of the manipulation of the code, we have learned that opposites are enemies. When instead they should, like, in essence, opposites are complementary. Um, so reactives are going to be very, very in the front. Reactives, whether it's mine, and if I have worked with my own reactives all these years, if I'm like really, really good at neutralizing my own reactives, then I'm gonna have to work in dealing with other people's reactives. So you're never off the hook because this is a collective space. If we want to be perfect in our own little world, then we can go back to the primary unfoldment. But if we want to evolve and continue here in the secondary unfoldment, then we have to deal with each other. There is like no choice. Um, okay. So, because these reactives are going to be so activated, all of the reactives are like all the buttons are being pushed. There's going to be people that are going to be showing something to society. Now, who is the main character of it's just so funny of this year? The one that is putting on the show, Donald Trump, right? He is putting on a show for all of us, for all the world to see. What is he doing? He's expressing the faults of our collective social um, structure. That's what he's doing. He's fulfilling a role. Now, he is like he's not gonna come out clean out of this. I mean, I'm sorry to laugh, but I can't help it. He's just he's just making a fool of himself. But a lot of people are just really angry at him. I'm not angry at him because I am mapping, observing all the faults. Not only that he is detonating, because he's detonating so many things collectively. And it was so necessary because it's becoming evident, right? Remember when Ale always does this? 2332. Remember that? The one that shows doesn't see. So in this case, it is going to be Donald Trump, the one showing. Of course, he can't see everything that he's showing because that's his role. So Donald Trump is a great asset for us and for Sol in this process. He is doing it amazingly, amazingly well, I think. So he's the one in charge of putting on the show and expressing all of these things. The one that pushes the button and the variables that are not adjusted are shown. So, he has a very crucial function. I'm using him as an example, but of course he's not the only one. There's going to be many actors, social actors that are going to be fulfilling this role. But us with this formation, we're going to be able to um use that because it has a function. If we're only making social interpretations and symbolic interpretations, we're going to be lost there and we're going to lose the opportunity of what this is. Um, so we are now able to work with those faults, okay? Because we are restructuring the SO and our antenna, our parabolic is open. And we have the solar code to read all of this with crazy anticipation. So, I don't know for you guys, but like for me, this happened this year, and of course it is like an impact. But then as it settles, it's like, yeah, 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 you understand it because it was anticipated. That is when we understand when Ale makes a reading of the code and makes a description of a future of a signal coming from the future, that is not a prediction. It is just a reading in anticipation that we are not going to know the how it's going to unfold. But when it unfolds, we're like, oh, yeah, 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 we were like we had anticipation of that a while back. Um, okay, so the challenge for personal growth in people that have an extra antenna, which that's our case, the challenge for us would be to take care of other people's reactives. Magnifying lupar others. Because we have to remember that the particular evolution is not mandatory. It is optional. So there's going to be many enjoyers of life active in the social area. So we are the ones that have that extra antenna. So we are the ones that have that extra responsibility. We cannot charge somebody else that doesn't have that with things that are my responsibility. LGC is high responsibility, is a role of high responsibility. Um, so in the social life, when we have all these licenses, these people are going to be blaming each other, blaming themselves or blaming each other because they need to excel the damage because they cannot capitalize it. But these are licenses that are open in the social plane. Yeah, and we're trained to understand those things. Now, another thing regarding guilt is that whether they exhale it or they internalize it because they need to process it somehow because they don't have that good concept of what a fault is for. They can't process it, then it becomes repressed. If I can't exhale it, then I internalize it and I repress it. Because I that person is not going to be able to understand how a horizontal octave works. Horizontal octave is going to have to do with the compensation system of the unified field. In a horizontal octave, an example is, she says here, an example of a horizontal of an octave that is only horizontal, that doesn't have this online connection, It can only function based on a compensation system. Example, a mother that has very few resources, like food, for example, and needs to feed the child, the mother doesn't eat so that the child eats. That is why that is an example of when there's a horizontal octave functioning inside a compensating system. You take from a place to give to another place. Yeah? That happens when there is no vertical octave. So you provide freedom while you subtract freedom from yourself, or vice versa. That is how a horizontal octave functions. Compensation. Okay? Um, but when, for example, if we are not based on a compensation system where in order for me to give you freedom, I have to uh, remove freedom from myself. In the other configuration, when we bring that liberty or that freedom from antimatter, then we're going to be able to have many possibilities to interpret that other person as somebody else from their processor. So, interpreting somebody else at the level of their processor allows an immense capacity to finance the fault so that the fault happens. It is like almost provoking the fault so that it expresses itself, so that we can actually capitalize on something and make an improvement on something. But it is controlled, it is modulated. It is not just like pushing buttons to see who reacts. No, no, no. There's a consciousness active, solar consciousness active, that has all these previous concepts constructed so that I am able to actually create an improvement and not just turn people on and make them crazy. Um, so when we have concepts that are not human, the faults are financeable, like they are financed. The faults are financed. Why? Because we are creating improvements. And we can only create improvements based on the registration of the faults. We need to have this concept of faults very clear in order for us to actually be able to work with this in real life. Okay, this is a little bit technical. Um, we go back to the table and we are talking about the interpretation of the 29th of February. We're talking about the update, the point inside the structure where the update of the apparatus is inserted. In the Gregorian calendar, that update, I mean, because it's an update that goes directly to the circuit. Because 9-2 is an update that goes directly to the circuit. And how does the social area interpret the circuit? Emotional. Yeah. So it is an emotional manipulation. To do it from that point in the structure in the Gregorian is very manipulative. But what Alejandra's doing here, she's shifting that. So, something that's going to help us decodify what the interference to the solar code is and why the orbit of Venus is overcharged. The orbit of Venus is overcharged. Why? Venus is the second orbital. And this is a little bit difficult to comprehend. I had to go and look and search to understand how the orbit of Venus works. But the thing is that um, for the planet Venus to turn on itself is it takes a longer time than what it takes to go around the sun. So it takes longer for the planet to turn on itself than what it takes to go around the sun. Alejandra translates this as an overcharge in Venus's orbit because of all the memory that has been inserted that is not from the solar code. It is all the external inserted memories to the code, to the native code. That's why Venus is so congested. That's why it can't turn on itself properly. Um, so this is all related to the 29th of February, okay? Then we also have the comprehension of the 32 columns. What we said, 22, 30, 22, 32, 23, 32, right? That is also related to the 32 columns of the table. Um, we have 23, 23, and 32, but it is finger 1 holding down fingers 4 and 5. So we have the antenna and we have the filter being held down by the receiver. All of that in this in this hand gesture, right? The code of this. So mm, mm, mm. When I show, I don't see, which is my blind spot. The one that shows does not see. So of course, the social scale is going to be showing things that I cannot see. That is where the solar scale needs to be picking up on all of that to create improvements. In our case, we are contents of the structure with solar consciousness included. So it is like our task. But remember, there is nothing to do anatomically speaking. We are reasoning. All the concepts, the clarity of the concept is going to be allowing us to reason all of these things. That is like the main function of the unfolded. When we reason all of this, and of course, we're all going to be doing different things according to our scopes. We go to sleep and it migrates to a different dimension. So for the unfolded, the main thing is we are conceptual and we're gravitational. Conceptual. Concepts are crucial for us to be able to reason things with more and more clarity. So the solar scale is the one that has to pick up all of that to create the improvements. And when the improvements are applied, the social scale progresses. And we all find ourselves in a new level of improvements at a social scale. Now, this whole development is not something that's going to be applauded because nobody can applaud something that they don't understand. So, if there is a person who has a really high appetite for applause, their place is not in ri, it is in ro. Okay. Now, she talks about day 118 of the year. When we read 118 in LGC, it has to do with the octave that's going to be recording 11, which is context. The octave that is going to be recording 11. Therefore, if in a normal year we find the 20th of April, we're going to have a closed circuit for our destiny inside the unified field. A closed circuit is very important because it's what makes things function. A closed circuit. If a circuit is open, there is no ebb and flow. There is no communication, current, nothing. A closed circuit is very important. Now, when she says a closed circuit for our destination inside the unified field, this is going to change from one person to the next. It's going to be very particular. Um, so this closed circuit, for in our case, because we have this formation, we can update that daily. We can enter into a scalar daily growth because we have this extra antenna. But for people that don't have that, the maximum time that they have to update their closed circuit is from when they're born to when they die. So it can take a whole lifetime for somebody to update their closed circuit. In my case, I have done it like 7 times, like a cat, probably. I think. And probably for you guys too, because we have that extra thing where we can update something that a lot of people take their whole lives. So, here's where she says, with solar consciousness, this can be updated at a daily scale. Okay. Okay, another important thing is that the LGC calendar on an Asimila year, on this Asimila year, is going to be taking jumps of 15 every day. We are adding 15 days on the total of the LGC calendar. Let's share the LGC calendar just to have a visual aid. So here we have it. Why 15? 1, 2, 3. This is 15 years that are being included. And for each year, it's 1 day added to the conceptual base, which is this, which is, look at the total. I hadn't looked at it, at this. 714, which is all of the left, and an update, 39. So we have 15 here. So every day, this is going to be changing 15 and 15 and 15. Now, let's look at tomorrow, for example. 15, you see? And that's going to be happening daily. Um, okay. In Calendaria, when we reach lap 15, this is where we begin to route these positions in the periodic table, remember? We finish with the black spaces, 2024. We finish with 789, and then we go to -1 and -2. Okay, I have to show. Let me search for lap 15 so we can see it properly. I don't have lap 15 for this year yet. So we're gonna use the one from last year. It's a regular year. Where is it? Okay. Here. So we finish with all the black spaces in the table. And on lap 15, we begin to route horizontally, beginning from the far left of the table, like this. -2, -1, 7, and 9 on one quadrant. And then next quadrant again, second column, -2, -1, 7, and 9, and so on until we reach the 32nd column at the end of the table, which is lap 22. Okay. She is using all of this to explain that this is going to create slowly a new track within society. But we have to create the how do you call the hole in the ground where the track is gonna go. That's what we are doing. Um, but if there is no solar consciousness, this is going to be impossible, unimaginable. If there are no concepts of primary unfoldment, this is not possible. If we cannot be asking the social scale to give us something that it does not have. Okay, so once we have recorded the 28th of April in a year, day by day, because the 28th of April is day 118. Um, so from day one of the year to day 118, we reach the closed circuit of our destiny, right? We need to be able to do all of that every year to reach that annual update, which we're kind of doing it daily according to each person's scope and capability. Um, so the thing is that why do we have to do this every year? Because there's things happening in the collective field every moment. There's people dying, there's people being born, there's changes happening all the time inside the field. So it's mutating all the time. That's why every year, every day, we have all these variables, right? We can plan for the day, but the day is going to bring something with it. So, first in the morning, the first thing that we need to do is check on the day. How is the day looking before I impose my agenda? Because the day is not mine. It's happening in real time, and real time has many variables to synchronize. So, but if my antenna is open and I am not just working based on my preference, if I have an open antenna, then I am going to be I'm going to the unified field is going to be providing resources for me, and I'm going to be working with that, and I am going to be flowing inside the day. If I'm not doing that, if I want to impose my agenda on the day that is not mine, I'm going to be very frustrated. But the thing is that we are learning to work with antimatter. And all of that that happens between day 1 and day 118, we're going to give that to the antimatter. We're going to give that to the antimatter because from 118, we go to 119, which is Toganeson. And then we begin the 30 spaces of the premise of Toganeson, and then we begin with all the black spaces. So we take all of that to the antimatter, that collection, so that our primary unfoldment works with all those occurrences that are not my own. Because we are in a collective field. 118, what is it? The collective octave. That's why after 118, we go to 119, and then we have all of that routing. Um, so occurrences that are not my own are very important because the occurrences that are mine are gonna be positioning me inside my own preference, inside my bias. But the occurrences that are not my own are going to be amplifying my radar. So we have the preference, which is gonna if I have both functioning properly, my bias, my preference is gonna make me very, very um precise inside the unified field. If I have both functioning properly. If I don't have the radar and the preference working together, if I only am focusing on my preference, but my radar is not working, then my bias becomes an impermeable wall. And that's not good for anybody. It's not going to be good for me. It's not going to be good for the people around me, for anyone. So the thing is, my radar has to do with all the things that are not my preference, all the occurrences that are not my own. And then my preference is going to have to do with the occurrences that are mine, that I'm developing inside the unified field, which are going to make me very precise inside the unified field if both things are working. Because if my radar is working, I am processing things that don't have to do with me. But I need those things to function better inside the unified field. So here we have radar and the bias, the preference. So today, because of the rejection that the social scale has for the faults, the bias becomes a wall. There is no radar, there's only preference. Because when there's a preference, uh, there there is no permeability, there is no capacity of course, looking at anything that is not myself. But if my radar is working, instead of blaming, I start to magnify, to lupar. En vez de culpar, empiezo a lupar. That when I start to magnify, I turn on my radar. When my radar is not in friction with my bias or my preference, I have online anticipation. Um, okay, here Ale says that 31, column 31, which is the place for Toganeson, we call 31 and 13 the question and the answer. That is the column where Toganeson is. Um, and it's right before column 32. But you see, this is not linear. You see, this is not linear at all because we are working with the antimatter. We're working with the solar code. So when we are, for example, when we are routing from lab 15, from the first column vertically, all the way to lab 22 vertically, that's one thing. But then when we are looking at 118 to 119, and then that's column 31, that's right before column 32, that's completely different, you see? Different concepts, but they all, of course, come together. So Toganeson is right before column 32. Um, and this is about, am I able to see everything that society's blind spot is trying to show me? Do I see it or do I not see it? Am I able to work with faults that are not my own? That's the question. If I am able to work with faults that are not my own to create improvements, it means that I am not in conflict with my own faults. If I am in conflict with my own faults, somebody else has a fault and it is a catastrophe. Because what I'm going to be looking to do is to depressurize and that's it. Now, if I'm not in conflict with my own faults, I am going to be able to work with somebody else's faults. Of course. Um, okay. So here, let's look at the table. Mm, oh, I have so many things open. Hold on. Okay, so we're gonna look at the table. This, Alejandra developed this so that we understand another pixel of why that update is introduced socially for the social scale on the 29th of February. Okay, look at this. First step of the promise of the Toganeson, we have 30 spaces. Now, if we remove this one, which is the actual 119, we get how many? We get 29, right? And when we finish this, we arrive where? To the second column of the table. This is the first, second, 32nd. So from step one of Toganeson, which is the one that activates the process, we have 29 and we have 2. See? This is so precise. This could not be uh observed. Of course, we're not gonna be expecting to understand this completely, but we can see that 29 spaces in the second column of the table. That's the 29th of February. Okay, so Alejandra opens that up. She's saying, this is how they have manipulated our hydrogen bridge. She says, I work for the little hydrogens of the universe. She wants to offer a safe construct to work between matter and antimatter, where the primary identity, the primary unfoldment, and the secondary unfoldment are not confused. They are each respected for what they are, and you don't ask something to one or the other that they cannot give. So, having comprehended the task of the Toganeson, which is the construction of the update in the antimatter, when we have already mapped out all the faults of society, we would be understanding the 29th of February and why all these occurrences are injected in our solar code through there. And these recordings are accumulated on the second orbital and the memory of the second orbital, which is Venus. So this is really good for Venus, and this is really good for everybody because Venus 21 and 12 is the coming and going that is between 3 and 0, which is Sol. So if the second orbital is having a hard time, then what does that mean? We're going to be registering everything that arrives in the third orbital as stress. Estrés. Tres, 3. That's why. I mean, explain this to somebody that is stressed out. It's so elegant. So elegant. This is solar code. So if Venus needs to make a rotation before it ends its translation, and it doesn't happen, it means that there is a functional overdraft in its memory. And that is why we register the third orbital as stressful. Why would we do that? If we are native to the third orbital, why do we register the third orbital as stressful? There shouldn't be any reason for that if the code was 100% solar, which hopefully that happens from now on. If it didn't have foreign injections. Now, if we had a full solar code, then the third orbital wouldn't imply any stress or acceleration of the algorithm. So
Can I ask something?
yes, go ahead.
Would Venus have then another different rotation?
Probably
It,
if the solar code functions properly, maybe yes. I mean, it would be expected that Venus starts to rotate a little bit quicker.
wow, interesting. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
I know. I know, right? Like we're gonna know, and then the scientists are gonna come out and they're gonna be saying, oh, Venus is rotating quicker, and we're gonna be like, yeah, I know.
But
Yes, we
Denise,
knew.
Denise, does it affect us? When Venus is going to rotate quicker, that has an effect on our orbital, isn't it?
Yes, of course, because um it's gonna mean that it's not gonna be congested. I mean, Alejandra isn't saying this like literally. She didn't say like, oh, if the solar code improves, then Venus is gonna do that. No, 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 no. She's not saying anything of that. We're making a deduction, of course. Um, but if Venus's orbital starts to function better, then that is of course going to have an impact in the third orbital, in the functioning of the third orbital. But I mean, this is like an indirect, this is like a very linear reading because if we look at the big picture, everything that is happening in the improvement of the solar code is going to have an impact in the way that we live inside the third dimension because it is including the third dimension, everything. It is like
But,
so many, many, many things that are having an influence.
but Alice said also that the Earth will go slower then. That
Oh
is
yes,
also,
she said
yeah,
that that is one of
yeah,
the
yeah,
purposes for LGC is for
yeah,
that for the Earth to rotate more slowly so that
yeah,
we are able to capture more details. Because of
yeah,
course, if something is going quick, you can't
yeah.
catch many details, right?
Mm.
Denise, do you remember the star Pluto, the nine? I remember and the end of 2023, beginning 2024, she mentioned it quite often that this planet, this number nine, this Pluto, is cleaning.
Oh, its
But
orbit. She said that the
Yeah,
orbit of Pluto was contaminated, right?
yeah,
yes,
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
and
Yes.
um, after that, I've never heard her talking about this process of
She
orbital
doesn't talk a
line.
lot about she doesn't talk a lot about that. I don't think she has said much more about that.
Okay.
Just that it is the ninth orbital and socially it is not included as a planet. Imagine if the last planet is 8 and there is no possibility for an update. One second. Uh-huh. Okay, so 32 columns. The 32nd column is helium. 31st column is Toganeson. Now, when we look at 13, we have M, right? And when we talk about Andromeda Galaxy, it is named M31. So, what does that have to do with our questions regarding our languages in Spanish? We're talking about Spanish, right? And the answers that we are getting at the level of frequency that go directly to the mute zone. So Spanish, M13 in Spanish, well, in English too, but specifically, we're talking about Spanish right now. M31 Andromeda, questions in Spanish and answers that are being received in the mute zone. That's how Andromeda works because it's civilized, it is not invasive. Um, it updates in the mute zone. So, in order for us to put those updates into a text, into so that we're able to communicate something, we the fourth cardinality needs to have occurred. And when the fourth cardinality is occurred, probably there's a fault included. Now, if I reject faults, I am not going to be able to use all the opportunities of updates. I am only in my preference. I'm not going to be able to update anything. Okay. So the second column is the one that brings the hydrogen bridge, right? Which is 148. The second column is 148. The 31st column is 119. So 148, which is the last step of the promise, is the design that is going to link a receiver with its octave. 148. Okay, she goes back to the twin year of 2026, which is 1970. So what does 1970 bring for us? Because the first year of that apparatus is 1969. But then 1970, what does it bring for us? 9779, the parabolic. Oro Berkelio. And we have that in the twin year of the Asimila 2026. Asimila 2026 is the unified field that pushes us towards a reassignation of the yo. I need to say that in Spanish because in English it gets confused. Yo. And she says it pushes us in the reassignation of the yo because we cannot choose that it doesn't. We can't choose otherwise. It is like a condition of 2026. So, but what we can do is anticipate that it's gonna do that. And not casually, but like very timely, in this year, Alejandra is talking about her personal development, which came lastly. And it came very, very timely in 2026. So for me personally also, this is very, very obvious as well, what has been going on. Because it's including everything at this moment. So the unified field is in charge of regulating the central nervous system of all of its contents. And when Alejandra says all of its content, she's talking from every single living thing on Earth. From a person to a monkey to a cat to a plant, whatever. We're gonna be seeing that, and we're already seeing this. So here we have lap 1 of 1970. Okay, this is like really technical, but it's really good. Brace yourselves for the technical. Lock your.
Do we need to have to go back to the text?
Oh, you're not in the text? Where are
No,
you?
in the
Oh, you're on
tabel.
the table. No, but it's about the table. Hold on.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Okay, but let me show you first this. Look at this. Look at the solar days, okay? The solar day of day 1 of lap 1 of 1970. 719. Look at the last 3 digits. Can you see clearly, guys? Just look at them for yourselves. Look at them. Okay? Because I'm going to change the image to the table, okay? Now look at this. The first day of lap 1 of 1970, solar day is 719,165. Look at this. 165, where is it? Here. Here. You see? Okay. That goes all the way to 80. Where is 80? I know it's so hard to follow sometimes. You have to keep your focus like this. Here's 80. So, on the solar day of lap 1 of apparatus of year 1970, in the solar day, we have on the last 3 digits, we have 165, 166, 167, 168, all the way to 180. That's lap 1. But it goes on, and that is year 1970. You're following me there? Let's go back to the year, to the lap. 165, 166, 167. Now, connect that to the black spaces on the table that we just looked. Yeah? Okay. Okay, so that's what we were just looking at. So, and then NE cardinality we have the digits that correspond to apparatus 493. One year or black space of the table. 169, 170, 171, 172. And that is the apparatus where Ale is born, but that is also the apparatus where the gold standard is removed and when the first leap second is inserted. Now, if you guys had a hard time going through the any cardinality of this lap one, that's why. I know. Okay. Now, yeah, okay, so the spaces that we just looked at in the table, right? So, what's gonna happen because we have this backup? All of these things that we have been looking at in relation to 1970 are the backup for all the challenges that we have to get through in 2026. When we get through all the dark spaces of 2026. Because we're going to be having an impact on 2026 with our antenna. That's why Alice says resources come from the antenna that comes from the antimatter, which is an extra antenna, but it's also a challenge because we have to use all those updates while we provide containment to the raw, which means magnifying, focusing, lupando fallas that are not my own all year. So if we don't like to do that, we can't be inside our collective memory. So, and how are we going to do that? Keeping quiet. So the challenge of keeping quiet is going to be wild because for every person that has an extra little piece in their antenna, silence is going to be the most important thing. Because update, fault, the mute zone, it's not about repression. It is about working with the radar. And we are the only ones that can do that because we have this formation. Because if not, it's repression. So they can't do any other thing than to exhale it. But we don't have to repress it because we have the radar. We have cone that can work in the antimatter. So it's not repression. It's a communication, connection. Okay. Particular
But
evolution is, yeah.
Denise, all these numbers you gave, they occur every 3 years, the end numbers.
No, because we're talking about the solar day of the twin year of 2026.
Yeah.
Like it is a direct relation with the year 2026 and 1970, the same way that Alejandra explained the connection of 2026 with 1582. This year is wild. We have to hold on because the turbulence is going to be wild. And it began on the 3rd of January. So,
Yeah.
okay. Okay. So, particular evolution is not mandatory for the unified field because destinations are offered for some that just want to come and enjoy life. So there's going to be infinite enjoyers of life living here with us, but we have to keep quiet if we want to mature at a personal scale. That's going to have to do with what I'm able to keep quiet. Now, for me to be able to keep quiet without repressing, I need the particular scale to be active because if not, keeping quiet becomes repression. And if I shut up, I annul myself and I allow the social scale to manifest. That's repression. But I also am not able to participate on that fault, on that improvement. Now, if the particular scale is active, I have an active observer and the octave has a place there. The octave has a place for the observer. Okay, so if I'm not participating in something, I have to be quiet about something, and my subatomic instance is active. It's fine. I am fine with not participating because I am lupando. I am scanning. I am scanning details. I am not blaming. I am scanning, but I am also not um, charging myself with something that is not my own. I am identifying what is not me so that I don't, if I'm confusing myself with something that is not me, I am going to be taking accountability for something that's not mine. And I'm going to be sinking my own boat. That's like right now, the credit is in Ri. Everyone has to be in charge of themselves. There cannot be any like, I'll support you. And I don't know if you guys have seen, I have seen this everywhere. People that were supported on each other's platforms, including my own life. I have seen it so much, how that is just not supporting itself anymore. Everyone on their own 2 feet. That is like just how the structure is functioning now. We inhabit one same unified field inside a compensation system that balances all of our central nervous systems simultaneously. We inhabit, I'm going to repeat that. We inhabit a unified field inside a compensation system that balances all of our central nervous systems simultaneously. And here she talks about her paternal grandmother and her days of occurrences to that day of the recording, which is 47054, which is 507 from left to right, and 44. And what is Alejandra doing? Exactly that. She's describing exactly that. She is using that anchor, that paternal grandmother anchor on purpose, but she says, I have the reins of that anchor, not the reactives of that anchor. So it's not the same. Remember, we clone memories in order for us to exist here in the third dimension. And if I don't reason these concepts, all those memories are going to do for me is reaction, 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 reaction of things that are not even mine. If I have worked all these things, then I use that ink as an anchor, but it doesn't use me. Okay? So that's why she says I have the reins of that anchor, but I am not anchored because of those memorials. And then she says, of course, I'm gonna have reactives to attend to, like to be aware of. We're always gonna have reactives. But those reactives are going to help me create improvements and they're going to give me active participation. So I am also going to be executing that role of Trump, like the show. I'm going to be putting on a show as well, but it's going to be modulated. It's going to be I'm going to be doing it consciously because I am aware that I need those faults to create improvements. Because a fault for me represents the capacity and the opportunity to improve. So I'm not going to be afraid anymore to have faults. I'm going to be actually happy to have them because I'm going to be using that. So not being afraid of exposing yourself and looking like a fool because that's the anchor for the improvement. If we don't do that, there's no improvement and we just get repressed. Okay, so everything is synchronized in an extraordinary way. But that synchronization is responsibility of the subatomic scale. Then it comes out as an extraordinary development because it's magnified by the unified field. When a development that is made by the subatomic scale and then it appears like it gets executed in the unified field, it's magnified by the unified field. So we see it there, but it's actually coming from the subatomic. Now, how did the algorithm of Mendeleev finish the year? 70088. And we're talking about silence, right? 88 is silencio. And it's also chaos and control protocol. So inside 7997, 800 is being contained. Well, on the 1st of January, which was 70089. Now, Ale, of course, says these is a data that cannot be manipulated because these are registrations that have to do with the memories of the container on, and they have nothing to do with Alejandra. It is a unified field that works with these variables. And now we also have 8, which is the civil registration of the solar system. She has talked about this a lot, where all the particularities that want to come and experience the solar code need to come through the registration of the solar system. Like they can't skip that. We have to, it is as if the solar system needs to know who's coming and who's going. And then we also have 789, which is the particular scale. So she's saying, we all reset together. Now, it is not that we all reset together and we reset together and at the same time and every reset means the same thing. No, we reset together, but every particularity is going to reset according to their own scale. And the important thing is not to reach more, but the equilibrium within what I am able to reach. So the configuration of value and the opportunity is within the things that I am able to reach. Value and opportunity. Focus on the value and the opportunity within the things that are within my reach. So when I am lupando somebody else, I have to be respecting. I do that so that I can respect the place of somebody else because the subatomic scale cannot be forced. Okay? It operates on laxed, not stretched, but laxed basis, and it has no evolutionary requisite. So if we encounter a person that is here to enjoy life, that person is going to take all the ignorance licenses that are on its way, and that's fine because that is provided by the container, and we're gonna have to figure out what we do with that. So it is a challenge, of course, but we have this amazing opportunity in the history of our solar history to have this marvelous code to activate. Because before we are a collective of people, we are a collective of particles. And every little hydrogen of the universe is a potential for a new universe. So if we are respecting that scale, we are respecting synchronicity. We are respecting everything that we need to respect. We are differentiating the scales, the processes, the instances, and everything. What's going to happen? Resources are going to come abundantly, but the rest of the world is not going to know where these resources are coming from. Okay? Okay, and she's like, this is like the beautiful part because everybody's going to be like quiet. Like, where is this coming from? All you can do is be quiet. When something amazing happens, what do? You can't talk, right? You get quiet. So silencio is 88. The protocol of chaos and control is executed. Chaos and control. We need the chaos. We need it. It's the base of everything. So the update is silent. We have, okay, 88, protocol of chaos and control. The update is silent. And if the update does not execute itself in silence, it's because there are reactives dominating the area. So this explains a lot. When there is a very loud situation happening, it's because it can't happen. Why can't it happen in silence? Because the antenna is not activated. It is the memorials that are being used. Now, there's another point. If I am reactive, but I am dominating the area, I am magnifying. I'm not blaming. Okay, but in order for me to do this, I have to have the concept of what the fault is, what it's for. If I interpret the fault from the symbolic scale, I'm gonna get frustration. I'm gonna get failure. And clearly, if this happens to me, I am not ready. Okay. Now, if I know what fault is for, I'm gonna be able to be in synchronization, capitalizing every single fault as an opportunity of improvement. But this is the antenna. I use the memory to make registrations, and I am going to be able to update these registrations daily. And then year after year, what happens? I have a really amazing updated memorial base, which is my anchor. A very important thing is remember to feed your interpreter, because whoever feeds their interpreter feeds the radar. Whoever feeds the interpretation feeds the preference or the bias. So, interpreter and interpretation, different things. If I respected the interpretation is going to become very precise, surgical. But I can only become so precise when my interpreter is open and eating flow of signals all the time. We need solar consciousness to be able to do this. Now, when all of this is put into execution together, every single one is going to have a specific license. And then the field is going to be compensating because the field needs to have a constant equilibrium. So what point are we gonna, each of us, gonna have? What role is each of us gonna have inside that equilibrium of the field? We don't know. That's why we are going through 2026, the recreation of the Joe. Okay, we're close to finishing, guys, but we still have a little bit. Okay. Um, there's still a lot. You guys still want me to go on? Because we have like 2.5 pages to go. It's a lot. Yeah? Okay. Hold on. I'll be back. You guys want a break? Do you want a break or you want to go on? I just have dry lips. Okay. Uh, okay, break? Okay.
I have to move to my car because my battery is almost out and I can reload it over there. So I will listen, but I
Okay.
walk to the car.
Okay. We can take a couple of minutes to continue. Okay, let's go. Alice says, the algorithm of the paternal grandmother is read exclusively as conflicts of the structure. Same thing with any other person that we read their metrics. We are resolving conflicts of the space-temporal structure, not conflicts of the grandparents. That is something that the social scale does, with the constellations and therapy and all of that. It is something that the social scale does, but that's not what we do. What we do is we try to resolve conflicts that have to do with the space-temporal structure. Okay, so she says, are we going to be dealing with pain? Probably. Probably yes. We're going to be registering pain, but do that. Register pain. Allow pain to be pain. If you allow pain to be pain, you're going to be tracking it, tracking it. You're going to be like, oh, I have pain here, I have pain there. Now it's here, now it's there, now it's here, now it's there. Because there's going to be a lot of activity, and there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be impacting us and that may be hurting us. So don't resist pain. She's like, what I'm saying here is terrible. Any psychologist would not even be allow me to be a student because she's like, just allow things to hurt, register pain, and do nothing else. But exactly What we're doing is exactly not focusing on the interpretation like every obsessive human being does. They obsess with interpreting every single thing. No, let go of the interpretation because I need the interpreter to pick up the resources of all the algorithms that are necessary. And the body is a resonance box that is giving you the rhythm of the update, of the improvement. That is like very important to register if I am always trying to force an interpretation or if I am able to leave the interpreter open because we need the interpreter open. Okay. Pain is a role. Dolor. Dolor in Spanish is pain. Pain is a role. It is a new role. L. It ends with L. New base 21 that needs to stabilize, that needs to root itself, because it has to do with neurological networks that are being transformed. Okay, so it is best to not resist to that because it's good. In the long term, it's good. And we have a lot of social and symbolic interpretations of that, right? We can find a lot of that socially. But this is it's at a technical level. So everything that is executed inside this resonance box that happens inside this little bag, which is our skin, our body is a bag of chemicals that are going to be showing us so many things. So when we allow pain to be, where we had so many maggots, then we're gonna have butterflies. So the one responsible for transformation is the subatomic scale because it has no frames, it has no restrictions, it can enter into anything, and it can reinterpret at any level. So all of the changes that are going to be executed, the changes are going to be executed very gradually and very wonderfully and very harmonically. Okay. And the changes happen based on the residual charge. Do you guys maybe are able to identify when you have a chemical discharge in your body of something that you don't like, and then the situation dissipates, but you still have chemistry in your body that you have to deal with, right? That would be the residual charge. So we are not different from the earth. The earth does that. From the garbage, she makes edible, fertile land. Earth transforms, right? In closed circuits. We do the same thing. It's just that we have never assumed that. So, okay. Now she says, in the unified field, the one to decide is the unified field. In the subatomic scale, the one that decides is the particle in the source. Okay, so we have, those are different scales of decide. Because in the subatomic scale, the particle in source in its imaginary identity is like, okay, I imagine a flower and I have a flower, and then I imagine a kitten and I have a kitten. I don't have any opposition. I don't have any residual chart. I don't have anything, right? There's no frames. But when I enter into a unified field, I imagine a flower and I get a thorn. Because in the primary unfoldment, everything is yes, 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 yes. And the secondary unfoldment, everything is no, 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 no. Because the conditionals are different, right? We're talking about something that is challenging. because either you came here to enjoy a structure or because you have an evolutionary appetite. Now, um, in the unified field, everything has a conditional, everything is part of a cycle, everything is part of a process, and it has a sequence. If I haven't matured at a subatomic scale, then I'm not going to be available for any kind of sequence. I want everything now. Why don't I have everything now? Why am I not perfect now? That denotes an immature subatomic identity. So enthusiasm is very important in this 2026. She says that LGC makes her more excited every time. And it is contradictory because it doesn't mean that she has less challenges. No, she has more challenges than ever. But the capacity to board those challenges and the capacity to transform those challenges into resources is increasing like a lot. So here she talks about the inscription for event 78. We don't have a date for event 78, 74. Event 74. We don't have a date for event 75 yet, but same requirements. And then she says that her personal resources become more and more scarce every day because the administration of those resources is part of her personal development. So now she needs to learn to plan because she's not very good at planning. She's really good at the online, but not very good at planning. So she's saying that the active community of 7-Eleven is helping her a lot, and she wants to thank all of them for staying and supporting the development year after year and providing the opportunity for her to train herself into creating more improved descriptions because she needs somebody else to support her. When we are creating resources in 11, resources that can be communicated, we need each other. And all the updates arrive on the mute zone. No updates arrive already formed, dialectically speaking. If you receive something that is constructed dialectically, it's a pure interference. Here she is also saying thanks to the program of Leti for providing us with the Red program, because the universe of listeners for the Ale and Red program is very broad and it is a bridge of communication for her that she needs to provide a very clear understanding. And it's very hard for her to communicate all of this, and especially in a universe of people that she can't interact with directly. So her personal resources are more and more restricted every time, but it is her training and she has a long way of training, but she's very happy and that she's very clear in her descriptions of everything that happens inside of her simultaneously. Then we have the solar day for the last day of event 7-Eleven, which is 737-679. And from that day to the 1st of January of 2026, we have 1940 days. So what is this? Daily reset. 194 is dia. D-I-A, dia. So 0, dia, we're talking about the daily reset. So 1940 days from the occurred event of 7-Eleven, we would be in the ideal conditions to do this daily reset. And the development has advanced to this point, and each person is going to be activating all of these things according to their own rhythm. Because it is very important to note that because the resource is advancing does not mean that the person has to have the pressure of advancing according to the process, because we would all be blown up. Each person needs to measure the distance of closeness or being so close or far away to the development and learn to leave the fourth cardinality loosened up, open, flexible, because there are things that need to remain floating, things that I'm not going to be able to understand at the moment, meaning that I need to relax the need to associate. It is a tremendous training. But all of these things make allow us to do this daily reset. On the 2nd of January of 2026, the summation of the LGC calendar is 36999. Remember that the algorithm of update in the total of the LGC calendar moves forward 15 steps in one day. So what this is telling us is this is going to be a year of changes at immense velocities. So the fact that the total of the LGC calendar is 36999 and we have 3732 in the line of 2012 means that we are going to be extracting the circuits from the external source 2012 according to the space-temporal structures. Meaning, this is a structural level that is very important. So that these, like, it is too important for all of these not to be manifested in a social scale in a tremendous way. Now, she said this on the 1st of January, and look at everything that has happened now. The changes are so grand, and this is why we are seeing everything that we're seeing socially. So yeah, that is basically it. We have 22 more encounters of Alejandra in red in the year, and the last red program is going to be red 173. Yay, we did it. That was a lot.
Oh, almost
Yeah, how
within
are
2
you
hours.
feeling?
Almost,
Almost.
yeah, within 2 hours. Yeah,
Oh, almost
wow.
2 hours. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
eight more minutes. I thought it was going to be more, but no, we did it. We did it quite well.
you did it. Wow.
Yeah.
It was a
And
long
I don't
one.
feel heavy. Sometimes I end up and I'm
Yeah.
just like, oh, I need to go rest. But no, I feel good. Do you guys feel
I
okay?
Good.
had
Or
one.
you? Yeah.
Thank you very much, Denise.
Yes,
You are
thank you, Denise.
welcome.
Mm.
No, thank you for receiving this whole emission because it's a whole emission. And you
Yeah,
guys are like putting, yeah, hearing it and keeping the attention is like very difficult. So,
I
yeah.
lost 10 minutes my attention, but I needed to walk. And then now it's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's like one of the hardest things or the like a big challenge nowadays is to
Yeah,
maintain our focus. Yeah, and
true.
it's something that we need to exercise.
Yeah, true.
Um, but yeah, thank you so much, you guys. I'll leave you to your evening, and we'll see each other
Yeah,
in the next Red Program meeting because we have a cycle meeting until the third
February.
lap.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Good. Okay.
So yeah, we'll be seeing each other
Okay.
next Red Program. Thank you so
Okay. Bye
much.
bye.
Really
Thank you.
beautiful.
Okay,
Thank you,
Bye
Denise.
bye.
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 Thank